Hey everyone, Sonia here back with another vape review. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Medo Pod from Medo Vape. Medo Vape have partnered with Golisi, a well-known battery manufacturer, to come out with this pod that has a 500 milliamp hour battery. The power and clouds from this compact pod are amazing. Let's jump straight in and take a closer look at the Medo Pod. Let's take a closer look at the Medo kit from Medo Vape. Here is the box. On the back of the box we have our package contents, your one battery, 2 pods and a USB charging cable. All pretty basic. Scratch and check is on the side of the box. Let's open it up. In the box you get a user manual, the Medo Pod battery, a USB charge cable, and 2 spare pods. The pods have a 2 ml capacity. They are bottom filling with a little silicone stopper here. A decent enough size hole for your juice filling, I suppose. It's not as big as what I've seen on some pods. And the actual cartridges, the actual pod itself is quite a lot smaller than other pods with a similar capacity. So somehow they've managed to make the pod and the coil system in here very compact. Now, there wasn't any information in the manual or online that I've seen so far that tells me what actual coil material is being used in here. You can just see it. There's a tiny little piece of material there, and it looks like it is cotton. It kind of has a fluffy appearance. I can see a little bit better than you guys can on the camera. But as to the actual material inside, I'm really not sure what it is. On the bottom of the pod is your contacts and also your fill port. You can see this is your airflow. 2 small holes there in the middle are your airflow. Let's go ahead and fill this one up. Fairly easy to fill. This unicorn tip bottle does do a good job of fitting in there. Although I think you're probably going to have a little bit more success if you use a specific fill bottle. Sometimes the needle filling bottles are just easier to use. Medo don't include one in the box, but it's not a big deal because, as you can see, this does fit in there quite well. I find with the needle tip bottles, you're able to fill your tank up all the way because I can see quite a large air hole in there and I just can't seem to fill it up anymore without the juice sort of overflowing. So needle tip bottles are handy for that. You may wish to just go straight to needle tip bottles for filling this one because that fill hole, while being big enough to actually fit the opening of the bottle in there, it is a little bit tight. So let's talk about the features of the Medo kit. Now, the design of the cartridge, or the pod if you prefer, has a leaf-proof structure. Also includes an anti-back blow feature, which I'm assuming by that they actually mean you should not be getting juice back into the airflow coming out of your mouthpiece into your mouth, which is good. Inside is actually, there's nothing on the box or in the product packaging that I found that told me what was actually the coil material inside here. But I did look it up, and yes, indeed, it is cotton, and it actually is a stainless steel coil. The battery in here is made by Golisi, and they've put in a 500 milliamp hour battery. So that's a little bit bigger than most of the pods we're seeing out there on the market, but not as much as what some of the newer ones are coming out with. Now, the device actually has a max output wattage of 11 watts, and the coil in here is 1.3 ohm. The pod itself is made from an aluminium alloy and a PC plastic. The coil has a resistance of 1.1 ohms. The pod itself has a size of 92 by 29 millimeters with a depth of 10 millimeters. micro USB charging located on the bottom of the pod. This is a draw activated device as there is no buttons. Charging time on this takes about 40 to 50 minutes for a full charge. So it's got a little bit of a beefier battery than what we're seeing in other sort of pods of a similar style, and the max wattage output of 11 watts is pretty decent for a pod device. Golisi makes some absolutely brilliant batteries, so I'm looking forward to seeing what the power and how long the battery lasts in this one, because I love my Golisi batteries and my Golisi charger. They're some of my favourite things. Obviously I use them every day. All up, I think the device looks quite nice. It's quite a sleek looking pod. Comfortable size. It's not too small like a pen device, but it's also not as big as some of the other ones I've seen either. Now, I'm not sure of the weight on this. I guess I will weigh it and get back to you guys on that. But it really is very lightweight for the size. Alright, so I'm going to have a puff on this. Holy hell, that's pod clouds. Oh my god. Okay, I'm quite impressed with this, and flavour is damn on point. But let's go back up top and I'll give you my thoughts on this Medo pod from Medo. The Medo pod has an attractive design and shape. Weighing only 30 grams, it weighs a lot less than you would think it does. Golisi have partnered with Medo to put in a 500 mAh battery. Now, it's a little bit of a bigger capacity than some of the pods out there, which kind of have 360 to 460 mAh batteries. Well, they've gone a little bit higher with the 500 mAh. Now, when I was looking up for the specs and information on this, I noticed there was a little bit of difference between what was on the box and what was on a website or a retailer site compared to what was on Medo Vape's site. But I'm pretty sure the specs basically are that it has an 11 watt output, though I did notice somewhere it said 8.5, so it might be 8.5 to 11 watts depending on your battery charge. Although I haven't noticed a drop off when the battery does need charging. It seems to maintain that constant power. The power and performance of the Medo pod is definitely better than some of the ones currently out there that are in this same sort of range. So it may not be as good as something like the Smoat Pesito, which my review for is coming up next. But the Medo pod definitely does have a bigger output of power than what some of the other pods I've reviewed more recently do, such as the Hunter pod as well as the Ion. You have two different types of coils available. There's one for nicotine e-juices as well as CBD juices. The nicotine salt coil has a 1.3 ohm resistance and the one for CBD has 1.5 ohm resistance. The pods have a 2 ml juice capacity and a bottom filling design. Bottom airflow holes provide a generous mouth-to-lung hit, and you can also just about direct lung hit this pod. The Medo pod doesn't have adjustable airflow, although I suppose you could stick a little bit of tape over one of those airflow holes on the bottom of the pod. That might work to restrict it a little bit, but if you're someone that likes a less restrictive mouth-to-lung hit, then you're definitely going to enjoy the Medo. Now, I did see something in the box that the airflow design on this has been designed to avoid leaking through your mouthpiece of juice. Unfortunately, I think condensation is still happening, so I have got a little bit of juice or residue in my mouth a few times. I notice that does tend to happen if I'm taking a really long draw on this. So it's not completely foolproof there, but at least I have noticed that it hasn't leaked in the bottom of the pod at all. The 500 mAh battery is slightly bigger than its competitors, although your battery life is going to be reduced based on the higher wattage output. Now, although while it does say it's 11 watts, to me it just seems a lot more powerful. I was able to use the Medo pod for around 10 hours of moderate vaping. So it should get a heavy vapor through an 8-hour day, maybe a little bit less. Good to see though, it does seem to have pass-through, so you can use it while it's charging if you have to, although it's recommended you don't do that. Golisi put a fair few different recommendations in the box in the manual with this, so it's good that you go and check that out and read it, because it says to not use it with a charger higher than 5 volts. So make sure that you're using a 1 amp charge current and not a 1.5 or a 2, or you can potentially damage that battery and reduce its longevity. Charging is reasonably quick and takes somewhere between 40 and 50 minutes. Flavour and clouds. Well, the flavour and clouds in this are pretty impressive. Pod clouds, I really cannot complain about that for a pod. course, it's not going to put out as much vapor as some of these new pods coming out with the RBA coil options, but for what it is, this is really quite amazing. Medo Vape went with a stainless steel 316L coil, which is probably why I'm experiencing better flavour with this pod. In terms of flavour, I'd say the Medo pod is on par with other coils that I've tried that are using stainless steel. Stainless steel just provides better flavour and seems to be an option where a lot of people are going if it isn't NI80 or Canthol. Hopefully we're moving more towards NI80 and stainless steel because I'm not a huge fan of flavour from Canthol. With this less restrictive airflow and a 11 watt output, the clouds are really amazing for a pod. And what's surprising to me is that while this pod doesn't cost that much, in fact, eFun are selling this for about $10 at the moment. Compared to the pods that I've been trying recently, which are more higher end ones, like $50 or $60 or more, this has just as good performance, if not better. So when it comes to pods and the prices, just go for something that works well. And you know what? I would probably buy this over those other pods. Now, having tried those ones compared to this one, what you're paying for your money, you're definitely getting a good deal. The Medo pod has all the features you would expect in a pod. Of course, you've got your short circuit protection, over discharge protection, overcharge protection as well. It does lack variable wattage, however, it seems to have a constant output power of 11 watts. The Medo pod is a draw activated device and has a LED to indicate your battery life or potential short circuits. Pros: I'm getting a really great flavour from that stainless steel 316L coil. They don't include the CBD 1.5 ohm coil in there, but you do get two pods that have the 1.3 ohm resistance, best for nicotine salts. The big pro is, of course, that massive vapor production for a tiny pod. Really nice, flavourful clouds. Quite like the sleek shape and design of the Medo pod and the different colours that are available. It's a little bit bigger than some, but really surprisingly light. And the final pro is the 500 mAh battery, that 2mAh capacity with the 11 watt power output. It's enough to keep you satisfied through a day of vaping. Cons. So the first con, I'm just going to mention that even though it says they've sort of done something to design so you're not going to get spit back through that mouthpiece, I am getting a little bit of residue, which is kind of a combination of your juice as well as condensation in the airflow. It's not a major thing, you just kind of tap it out and it clears pretty easily. It could also be because I am more of a direct lung vapor and this does have a fairly less restrictive airflow, so I'm potentially sucking a little bit too hard, which may cause that juice to come back into the mouthpiece. Not too much of a problem, but just be aware of it, and it's something that I've experienced in pretty much every pod. And another con for me is that I'm not sure what's going on here, if the device is trying to kick in to alert me of some potential issue with the coil, but it seems to be that the short circuit protection keeps on kicking in with the coil I'm using at the moment. I did notice that if I'm using it more regularly or chain vaping, it will seem to happen more often. Now, there doesn't seem to be any issue with the coil because most of the time it is working fine. So some sort of protection is kicking in occasionally, but it just seems random to when it really seems to happen. So I'm not sure if that's a fault with the pod or could be a fault with the actual battery unit. I'm not sure. I haven't actually gotten around to testing it with the second cartridge because this one is still perfectly fine and I'm still getting really good clouds and flavour. But yeah, I will update down in the comments below if I have any more issues regarding that. It could just be something with the coil. You know, it's good sometimes to clean your contacts as well. If a little bit of juice residue gets in there, that might potentially cause that issue as well. Other than that though, it's a really good pod and it's such a minor issue that I haven't really had a big problem with it, but I just want to mention that for the sake of being unbiased in my review. Bottom line, if you like fulfilling pod clouds and a lot of flavour, then I think you're really going to like the Medo pod. It's a decent pod and one worth getting if you're a pod enthusiast. I rate the battery performance and the length of time between charges fairly average. It is really about average and that's a lot to do with that higher wattage output. For flavour and clouds, I rate the Medo pod a 9 out of 10. This one really is up there as one of my faves. I think if the battery just lasted a little bit longer or it may have variable wattage, it would be a full 10. The longevity of the pods could be a potential issue when you're vaping at that higher wattage, but I've been vaping this pretty solidly since it came and I haven't had any issues, and that coil is still going strong after about 3-4 fills. All up, I give the Medo pod a rating of 8 out of 10. I do like this one better than the Aurora Play pod, which is surprising, and I also think it's got a little bit of an edge on the Yosta Y-Pod Mini, which doesn't have the massive power output or clouds this one does. Well, that's all for me for this review. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please do leave a thumbs up. And if you're on YouTube, make sure you go and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when I've uploaded a new video. Keep it cloudy.